1-4, main estimates 2017-18, votes 1 and 5 under Atlantic Opportunities Agency, votes 1 and 5 under Canadian Northern Economic Development Agency, votes 1, 5, 10 under Canadian Space Agency, vote 1 under Canadian Tourism Commission, vote 1 under Copyright Board, vote 1, 5, 10, L15, L20 under Industry, votes 1 and 5 under Western Economic Diversification, votes 1 and 5 under Economic Development Agency of Canada for the regions of Quebec, votes 1 and 5 under Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, votes 1, 5, and 10 under National Research Council of Canada, votes 1 and 5 under National Sciences and Engineering Research Council, votes 1 and 5 under Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, vote 1 under Standards Council of Canada, and vote 1 under Statistics Canada, referred to the committee on Thursday, February 23rd, 2017. It's more than a mouthful there. I'd like to welcome today, we have the Honourable Kirsty Duncan, Minister of Science, along with John Nubley, Deputy Minister, Kelly Gillis, Associate Deputy Minister, and Lawrence Hanson, Assistant Deputy Minister. I didn't forget anybody there? Nope, we're good. Thank you very much for attending, everybody. I'm going to pass it on to Minister Duncan for opening comments.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm pleased to be here this morning with our Deputy Minister, John Nubley, our Associate Deputy Minister, Kelly Gillis, and our Assistant Deputy Minister, Lawrence Hanson. I'm really pleased to be here this morning as the SUSTAIN Committee reviews the main estimates for 2017 to 2018. You will know that this fiscal year, the total for our department is up $1.3 billion over last. This is largely due to the investments in research infrastructure that our government made with the Post-Secondary Institution Strategic Investment Fund. This $2 billion investment demonstrates our priorities when it comes to supporting scientific excellence in this country. Now, when we are investing in such a major way to build and upgrade Canada's research facilities, this is really an investment in the people that make science happen. This is my consistent refrain in all that I do. It's all about people. It's the lens through which I view all our support for Canadian science. It's why our approach has been and will continue to be making investments to provide people with the right skills and opportunities to make their greatest possible contributions to Canadian science. For example, through the Canada First Research Excellence Fund, we have devoted a full $900 million to the Canadian researchers who are taking action on grand initiatives like quantum computing, stem cell research, brain science, and so on. This year's budget is also investing $125 million to maintain and enhance Canada's international reputation for excellence in artificial intelligence. The committee may be familiar with some of the amazing people already doing world-leading work in this field. Yoshua Bengio in Montreal, who is a world expert in deep learning and artificial neural networks. Jeffrey Hinton at the University of Toronto, who is doing groundbreaking work in computer science and artificial intelligence. It's important to remember that all these investments are in addition to the boost we have already provided to our 3 national granting councils through Budget 2016. They now have access to an additional $95 million per year in ongoing permanent funding. This is the highest amount of new annual funding for discovery research in more than a decade. This new, unfettered funding supports the efforts of tens of thousands of researchers and trainees at schools and facilities across the country. That said, we haven't forgotten that more than 20,000 scientists and specialists are engaged in science and technology activities, government science. To help give these world-class professionals the tools they need, we will develop a new federal science infrastructure strategy. Nous avons déjà entamé des
We have already kicked off things by providing $80 million to replace the Sydney Centre for Plant Health with a new world-class plant health research facility. We are also making investments directly in the work of these federal researchers across all departments.
We have set aside support for the Community and College Social Innovation Fund, which fosters community college partnerships aiming to achieve beneficial social outcomes. Science is helping communities to understand and meet the challenges and opportunities around them. This is one of the ways we are making good on our commitment to the multidisciplinary nature of science. I truly believe that we can make so much more of the relationship among the pure sciences, the humanities, and social sciences. We do all this because, again, it's all about people. It's about nurturing our domestic talent, even from the very earliest age, and all throughout their schooling and careers. That's why we are investing to teach grade school students to code, the language of tomorrow. We are also providing major support for Promo Science, a highly successful program that encourages young Canadians interested in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. In addition, we are funding up to 10,000 new work-integrated learning opportunities per year through my tax research internships. As Science Minister, I want all young Canadians to be able to see themselves taking part in the world of science. As I hope I've shown so far, our government is investing strategically to make the most of today's and tomorrow's homegrown talent. But we also need to make sure we are attracting the best international researchers to Canada. Dans cette optique et pour souligner.
That's why, in honor of Canada's 150th anniversary, I have announced a new type of Canada Research Chair to attract top-tier scientists and scholars from around the world. And we're working to implement this quickly so that universities can get these talented men and women to Canada as soon as possible.
The Science Review and how it will inform the future of Canadian research and scholarship. As you may know, a broad external review of the federal agencies had not been done since the 1970s. Simply put, it was time. I am profoundly grateful to all the distinguished panel members, including the chair, Dr. David Naylor, for their service. I am reviewing the panel's recommendations now with a critical eye, through that people lens I've been talking about. I'm pleased to see that the report talks a lot about talent. It talks about how we can best support students, researchers, professors, and everyone else involved in our research ecosystem. It particularly highlights diversity and equity as places we must do better. This rings so true with me. Throughout my own academic career, I have consistently advocated for more diversity in science. Science needs more women and more young people. It needs more Indigenous peoples and more Canadians with disabilities. Because as University of Victoria President Jamie Castles so eloquently says, quote, "Diversity is the foundation of excellence." That's exactly why we have instituted new equity requirements in the Canada Excellence Research Chairs competition. Right now, there is only one active female CERC. This is unacceptable. We have to do better, and I've told university presidents that I am expecting to see a change. Bien plus, je vais continuer d'explorer les mesures qui pourraient.
Moreover, I will continue to explore other measures to encourage more diversity and equity in the research community. If Canada is to achieve the greatest potential in research and science, we need all people to know they are welcomed in the lab, in the field, and in the classroom. I cannot say it enough. The key word here is people.
And into sharp focus, the challenges facing early career researchers and new investigators. Young scientists come with fresh insights and new ways to solve old problems. We've only to think about James Watson, Francis Crick, and Rosalind Franklin. Their ages were 24, 36, and 32, respectively, when their work led to the discovery of the DNA double helix. Think of the science we may be missing out on for want of supporting our early career researchers. We hope to announce the appointment of the Chief Science Advisor before the summer recess. He or she will be feeding into this discussion as well. But I am confident that if all partners, public and private, are united, working towards a singular goal, together we will be able to create a research system that is bold, vibrant, and equitable. Thank you for having me to this committee, and I'm looking forward to receiving your questions. Merci.
Thank you very much. And we're just going to jump right into questions. Mr. Arya, you have the first 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for coming in here. And Minister, I'm so glad that you're talking about diversity. You know, we had this Bill 336 just before this committee, and when that bill was introduced, the government did not show any direction what it meant by diversity. But after the deliberation in this committee, the government has finally agreed to put into regulation what it means by diversity in the bill. It says that it includes the designated groups such as women, indigenous people, visible minorities, people with disabilities, and others. I did notice in your speech that you talked about diversity. You said, I would like to quote you, "Science needs more women and more young people. It needs more indigenous people and more differently abled Canadians." I guess it was an oversight that you didn't include visible minorities there in the speech, but that's okay. I know that you mean well. On the investment in research, I'm so glad that we are back into investing in fundamental research. You know, it's very important for us to invest in this because this is what keeps Canada at the forefront, continues to keep Canada at the forefront of the new global knowledge-based economy. You know, one thing is that I know bulk of the funds that is going into fund research is used very productively by the universities. But anecdotal evidence also states that some of it is going to, I don't know how to put it, to fund dead wood. That is continuously subsidizing people who are not so productive. Is there any measurable thing, you know, how can you measure the outputs or deliverables for the huge investments we are making?
Thank you, Chandra, for your question. You've raised a number of issues, so I'll try to address them all. Thank you for your commitment to equity and diversity. As you know, our government is the first government to have a gender balance cabinet. In this last budget, 2017, there is a gender statement. When I took on this role, I made it very clear that I would make equity and diversity and science a key priority for me. And I began having discussions with the universities, with the granting agencies. In September, we brought back the universities, colleges, academic staff survey, UCAS surveys. It was in place since 1937. It was canceled under the previous government. And come this spring, we will have data to know if people are progressing through the ranks at the same rate, if they're making equal pay. In October, we put in place new equity and diversity requirements for our Canada Excellence Research Chairs. These are among the most prestigious awards in the world. They offer $10 million over 7 years. And right now, we have only one woman who is a CERC. It's unacceptable. In October, we posted that diversity and equity data on the Social Sciences Humanities Research Council website. It's the first time. And you will know in the last few weeks, we've put in place new requirements regarding the Canada Research Chairs. Canada Research Chairs have been in place since 2000. And they're very prestigious to have. And we're saying to the universities, if you have more than 5 of these research chairs, you're going to have to put in place an equity and diversity plan by the end of the year, and we expect you to meet those targets by 2019. And if you don't, you won't be having your proposals reviewed. To come to your point about fundamental science is a key driver of innovation. Our government's priority is economic growth, jobs, growing the middle class, and those working hard to join it. If you want innovation, a key driver of economic growth, you need fundamental science, discovery science, curiosity-based science, because it's a continuum through to applied science, innovation, those commercial products and services that we'd like to sell. But I want to be clear, it is not an easy continuum. It's actually very messy. Scientists go back and forth seamlessly between fundamental science and applied science. I'm really proud of the investments our government has made. In Budget 2016, we gave the largest top-up to the 3 federal granting councils in a decade. It was $95 million. That was for 2016, 2017, and each year going forward. I won't talk about the fundamental review at this point. It matters, and I think it's really important for this committee to understand the world-renowned peer review system we have in this country. So when people apply for a grant, they put together, the granting councils, a world-class panel to review each grant application. They're carefully reviewed, and then those results are made public. So we have this world-class review system.
Thank you, Minister. And second, Ontario Chamber of Commerce, they released their Ontario Economic Report this past February. It's a survey of all its members, small, medium, large businesses in Ontario. What they identified was the topmost concern of all its members is acquiring suitable staff. They are finding it difficulty in acquiring people qualified to come join as their employees. On the other hand, when we are doing the manufacturing study here, the representatives of the Universities Association mentioned that their graduates are finding it difficult to get jobs. So on one hand, we have the universities stating that the candidates are finding it difficult to get jobs. On the other hand, we have the businesses saying that they cannot get suitable staff. How can you use our funding power to make sure that the university align with, so that they can meet the requirements of the industry and businesses?
10 seconds to answer that question.
Thank you, Chandra, for your question. I'll be as brief as I can. One of the investments we've made in Budget 2017 is for MyTax. And MyTax there will be 10, we are funding $221 million for 10,000 work-integrated learning spaces for our students. We want them to have that real-world experience.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dreeshen, you have 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Minister, for being here this morning, and to all of your folks from the department. Just a couple of things, and certainly I guess I'll just start off with, I just came from a meeting where our interim leader, Rona Ambrose, had just spoken with the Economic Club of Canada. So when we talk about great women in leadership roles, I think of her. I think of Deborah Gray, Kim Campbell. These are people that had won their jobs because of the great skills that they had. I remember going back into down in Central America when we're talking about how do you get women engaged and involved in politics, and at that time 80% of Canadians had female premiers. So there's great opportunities for people to work and to use the skills that they have, and they need to have chances by everybody, and sometimes that comes via political parties to make sure that you elect strong people that are there to be able to take on these positions. So So, and I say that to kind of tie into the discussions that you have when you have said to universities that if they don't meet quotas or diversity targets, that something is going to be done. And of course, what we have heard is there will be withdrawal of funding and that. But I'd just like you to be able to tell us what actually that means. So how will you roll out that policy? Is it something your government will be legislating, or will it be departmental policy at the Tri-Agency Institutional Programs Secretariat? How will you be withholding funding for those that don't meet the targets that you've looked at? And the other aspect of it, are we going to be seeing decisions about research funding no longer being in hands of the experts who review and evaluate the science, but rather in the hands of politicians, consultants, or bureaucrats that with little experience in advanced research and what happens to the Tri-Agency Institutional Program Secretariat?
Earl, thank you for your question. Let me be clear. Equality and excellence go hand in hand. I have gone across this country, and the women I meet with are outstanding researchers. I think of people like Victoria Caspi, who won the who won the Hertzberg Medal, NSERC's, as you know, NSERC's highest prize. Just the other year, I think of Molly Chaussee, who've just won a Killam Prize. There are excellent women researchers. Our priority is always excellence. And that means the proposals are reviewed. I've talked about our world-class review process. However, we have not seen the increase in women and other underrepresented groups in the sciences that we should have. We know when we bring all minds to the table, to the lab, to the field, it is good for research, it is good for Canadians. I will give very specific samples of what happens when women and diverse groups are not included. And the example I'll start with are heart valves. The first heart valves were created by cardiologists who happened to be largely men. And they made heart valves that fit a male-size heart and not a woman's size heart. Voice recognition software. The first voice recognition software was calibrated only to men's voices. And the third example I'll give are airbags. The first airbags in cars were created by engineers who happened to be largely male. They made airbags or prototypes that fit a male-sized body. And when those cars went onto the road, women and children were injured or worse. We need to make sure everybody is included, that they come with different perspectives, ideas. They may use different methodologies, they may ask different questions, and we may get different results that benefit all Canadians. Yesterday, I hope everyone is attending Science Odyssey events. We have 600 of them across the country right now. Imagine, I know you were there yesterday, and Kate, and I thank you for coming. It's really important that we encourage young people to enter science, and particularly women.
These are great examples, Madam Minister. However, the question basically is, what is the government going to do when it comes to making decisions about those particular chairs? I understand why it's important, and don't get me wrong, I understand and recognize that. However, the statement was made that the universities are going to have to conform, they're going to have to explain the rationales and everything else, and then decisions will be made. My question is on the decision-making process, and where is that going to go?
Thank you, Earl. I want to be clear. These were targets that the universities voluntarily agreed to back in 2006. And these targets were based on statistics. They were based on discussions, but statistics around population. The universities committed to meet these targets. It is now 2017. Those targets have not been met. So I'm saying, we're going to put in place a policy to ensure that they have equity and diversity plans in place. and show us how you're actually going to make these targets that were voluntarily agreed to. It is always based on excellence. But what happens if they come forward with chairs that are not meeting the numbers, that there is the possibility that funding will be withheld till they bring forward new options that are more reflective of the targets they have voluntarily agreed to.
Just in the few seconds that I have left, there's been cuts to both the National Research Council to Canada. My tax, there's been dollars that have been moved from certain areas, as well as the Centers of Excellence for Commercialization and Research Programming. So I'll just pick one because I think that's maybe all the time that I would have. So why are you cutting the $1.7 million to the Centers of Excellence for Commercialization and Research program?
Yeah, sorry, I will have our Assistant Deputy answer that.
Yes. So really this is a product of the competition cycle for the CERCs themselves. They're for a limited number of years. As new competitions are launched, the new investments are made. So we are expecting to launch a new competition under the CRCs shortly, but it's just really an issue of cash flow and competition timing.
Thank you very much. We're going to move to Mr. Massey. You have 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Minister, for being here. And I do actually appreciate the movement that's taking place at the universities and colleges, because they're also, in addition to the overall society problem that we have with the inclusion of diversity. My background is as an employment specialist on behalf of persons with disabilities, youth at risk. And I can tell you that, a clear example is women still do not receive the same pay for same jobs. So I think it is important that this movement's happening. I think the unfortunate thing, and I like your commentary about this, though, is the fact that your legislation that's being proposed by your government under C-25 does not do the same thing. This is the reform to the Canadian Business and Corporations Act, where you're moving to a comply and explain model for diversity, and it doesn't even mention the word gender actually in the legislation. So I'd like your thoughts in terms of how this is really at odds in terms of what's taking place with regards to legislation in the House of Commons. So it's clear that the voluntary commitment by public institutions that actually have board of directors that are assigned by the public have required this type of a step to change the behavior with regards to inclusion, especially given the populations and the diversities that they actually, and the gender balance that they represent from their customers being students. And then second of all, why it's not carried forth in terms of legislation to the Corporations Act under Bill C-25. I had several amendments that were defeated at this committee.
Brian, thank you for your question. We know when boards are more diverse, companies do better. It is the same for science. We want people who come with different perspectives, different ideas, asking different questions to come forward. I have spent 25 years of my life fighting for more equity and diversity in science. Yesterday, I was at Science Odyssey. I met two incredible full professors that have reached the level of full professors, women in engineering, and they're saying, as we're hearing from across the country, thank you for standing up for the Canada Research Chairs. It has been 11 years. Those voluntary targets haven't been made, and they are grateful for the changes that they see as coming, and that the universities will be held to account.
And I do appreciate that, but your government legislation making law is not doing the same thing. It's at odds with itself. It's at odds with this committee. It's at odds the voting in the House of Commons on Bill C-25. So I'd ask you to consider that as that legislation works its way through. The other one to review is through this committee is Bill, as a scientist and working so well within our academic communities, is Bill C-36. So I won't touch on too much of it, but I would just at this point appeal to a review of that. It's amazing, Madam Minister, that despite Amir Sheikh and Mr. Wayne Smith and other testimony that we had in this committee, not a single word, not a single amendment was able to pass through this committee with regards to the inclusion of their contribution. In fact, several witnesses that have high-profile academia respect not only home domestically here and as well as internationally. And lastly, they were the former census operators, both resigning over, differences of opinion in terms of the scientific approach to the census, going from short-term to long-term, or long-term to short-term and so forth, and also provisions. Not a single word of their testimony of any of the witnesses will be included in the legislation that's been proposed to go back to the House of Commons at this time. I would like to move, though, Madam Speaker, to, I guess, one of the things that the review panel and the expectations for it, I think that was an excellent approach from the 1970s. We didn't even have the concept of this being, a mobile phone, even really, let alone, I think the first time I saw a mobile phone was in the movie with, I can't remember, with Mel Gibson and somebody else, and they picked up the phone and it was like 10 pounds. It looked like a World War II phone. Any rate, can you give us an indication, though, when we might hear back from that, and then what type of movement and resources the government has committed towards that?
Thank you, Brian. I'll talk a bit about the fundamental review. It has been since the 1970s that there has not been a comprehensive review of the funding ecosystem since the 1970s. Can you imagine any other system that had been allowed to go 40 years without being reviewed? Therefore, I was very committed to doing this. We had this incredible Blue Ribbon panel. It was chaired by Dr. David Naylor, the former president of the University of Toronto. It included people like Dr. Art MacDonald, our newest Nobel Prize winner from British Columbia, Dr. Martha Piper, the former president of UBC, Mike Lazaridis of BlackBerry, and the chief scientist of Quebec, Remy Quirion, a Blue Ribbon panel. I want to begin by saying thank you to them. They have worked tirelessly for their commitment, for their insights that will improve the ecosystem here in Canada. And I want to thank all the individual researchers, the research organizations in the universities and other academic institutions that contributed to that review. I was pleased to receive the response on April 10th. I was very clear that this report would not be buried or hidden. It was released at the Public Policy Forum so that we could begin a national discussion about how we fund federal support for fundamental science. There are 35 recommendations. They talk about the need for additional funds for investigator-led research, but there are also issues of governance and coordination, the need for more equity and diversity, the need to support early career researchers, and to make the system more nimble and responsive. For example, if Zika or Ebola hit, that there would be money available that we could get out to the research community quickly, and also supporting multidisciplinary research. We have big challenges, whether it's climate change, it's antimicrobial resistance. We need to bring different disciplines to the table, and for risky research. So those are some of the recommendations from the report.
Thank you very much. Mr. Longfield, you have 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Minister, and support people being here today. Getting back to the estimates, it looks like there's an increased focus on the National Research or National Sciences and Engineering Research Council with $86.8 million of planned spending. Madam Minister, you talked about the need for fundamental research. In the previous conversation we had when you were down in Washington, you were talking about the separation between fundamental research and innovation, and how innovation can come from fundamental research, but there's really no guarantee. That's why it's fundamental research. Could you maybe comment on the need for catching up on NSERC funding, and where are we at? Where do we need to be in order to regain our ground there?
Thank you, Lloyd. You've brought in a number of pieces here. You started with the National Research Council, so I'll address that first. The National Research Council has a proud 100-year history in this country. and we want to make sure succeeds going forward. You will know we have a new president, Mr. Ian Stewart. He comes with a tremendous background of both academic and government work in science, technology, innovation, and economic development. When he came on board, myself and my colleague, Minister Baines, sat down with him. I said that there needs to be a lot of listening. And he's had hundreds of conversations with the employees of the NRC. And in the spring, we'll come forward with ideas of how we strengthen the NRC. I've been clear, I don't want it to be a political football any longer. We want to make sure that its Industrial Research Assistance Program, or IRAP, which has 250 advisors across the country, provides help to small businesses. Last year, 2,500 businesses helped support 11,000 jobs. Continues and is strong. I'd also like to see fundamental research strengthened, because that's where the innovation will come going forward. You've also talked about needing to support fundamental science. That's part of my research mandate. So we have put in place the top-up of the $95 million to the granting councils. That is unfettered money. That is a real change from the previous government that tied money. If you look at the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, in 2005 there was no tied money. In 2006 it was 9% was tied, and before budget 2016 it was 37%. So it's unfettered money.
Thank you. Within the social sciences and humanities research funding, I noticed something that Mr. Dreeshen also brought up in terms of the reduction in centers of excellence for commercialization and research. I spoke yesterday with Universities Canada, and they mentioned some concerns around the intellectual property mobilization program that had been canceled in 2009. We had brought it back, but there's some reductions in funding around intellectual property mobilization. This committee is just about to start an IP study, and I think a key part of that study is going to be technology transfer. So I'm concerned that we may be heading in a direction that the government is heading in the other direction in terms of technology transfer and funding of technology transfer. Is there anything there that I'm misreading into it, or where are we at in terms of focus on technology transfer?
Thank you, Lloyd, for your work in this area. And I actually would like to thank all of the committee for being down in Washington, D.C. 2 weeks ago. Thank you for being there to recognize and celebrate Dr. Art McDonald. Thank you for the important meetings you had down there. I'm going to use artificial intelligence as a way to highlight the shift from fundamental research through to applied and on to commercialization. Canada really is a world leader when it comes to artificial intelligence. I think of people like Geoffrey Hinton, Joshua Bengio, and we have these incredible areas from Toronto to Waterloo, Montreal hub, out in Edmonton. Our talent, our ideas are in high demand around the world. We want to make sure that that activity stays here in Canada. And so in this budget 2017, we're investing $125 million in artificial intelligence to create a pan-Canadian artificial intelligence strategy. And we know with these research hubs, and Frank, I think of you in Montreal. Montreal has the Canada First Research Excellence Fund, and it went to as part of that funding, it went to artificial intelligence in Montreal. And just as a reminder to the committee, we had a $900 million investment in artificial intelligence in September. But the idea is if you create these research hubs We know that companies will be attracted. We also know there will be applied research and that you will get commercialization.
Thank you. And it would be sorry, Mr. Nubley, did you have something?
Yeah, I would just add that very consistent with Minister Duncan's example of artificial intelligence, I think broadly in the innovation agenda, we are looking at a number of points of interest, if you like, with respect to tech transfer. Another concrete example would be the initiatives related to our incubators, where we've funded incubators over the last few years. Basically, these are entities that are specifically designed to help take the excellent science that Minister Duncan is focused on and talking about to the marketplace. I think the Honourable Navdeep Bains will also want to speak more broadly about intellectual property and the issues at play there, and how we need to move forward, again, from the innovation agenda's perspective to really promote a strong intellectual property regime in Canada to make sure that tech transfer happens.
Thank you, and thanks for your support for agriculture. I just had to sneak that in.
Of course. Can I just respond to that, actually? I'll be really quick. Lloyd, thank you for being such a champion in this area. As you know, $70 million was invested in Budget 2017 in agricultural research, but when we were down in Washington, it's the National Science Foundation has told us the areas they want to come up to Canada to see our research are in neuroscience, in quantum, and Arctic, but also in biodiversity at the University of Guelph and the barcoding that's done there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to move to Mr. Lobb. You have 7 minutes.
Thanks very much, Minister, for coming here today. I just want to go touch briefly on the diversity that you've set out for universities. And again, I know there's a couple other members that have talked about this, but in the regulations. Again, Mr. Massey and I fought really hard to get it actually into the bill. We weren't able to do so. But really into the regulations, it's basically just comply or explain. There's no target set. So when you and now Minister Bains are sitting around the table having discussions, does that come up where in one piece we're talking about the makeup of our corporate boards having a much weaker and lesser standard than the chairs at these universities. So does that come up, or why would the department come at it from one direction on one and then another direction on the other? Why wouldn't it be the same?
Ben, good morning. It's really nice to see you part of this committee. You and I have worked together for a long time. I will speak a bit, and then I will turn it over to our Deputy Minister, John Nubley. I really want to bring home that we're taking a very different approach on science than the previous government. The previous government...
Sorry, I don't want to get into the before or after. I'm just saying it's 2017 now, and your colleague, Mr. Bains, brought a bill forward that had one set and yours had different. So we don't need to talk about Stephen Harper. We're talking about you two. And why would one have one and the other have a different
Ben,
one?
I am going to do 2 sentences before I hand it to my Deputy Minister. We are taking a very different approach than the previous government. Previous government cut scientists, muzzled scientists, scientific evidence.
Well, I think if that's the approach you're going to take, Minister Duncan.
I'd like to talk about Seat 25. I know the Honourable Navdeep Bains will have another opportunity on, I think, Thursday to speak to that. I think in that context, that bill does identify a name and comply approach. And similarly, with respect to the CRC program, what we're proposing that all institutions with 5 or more chairs, so these are specifically the medium and large universities, must table a plan. It's not enough to just do their targets, but they must also table a plan to reach the targets. As Minister Duncan was mentioning, the challenge when we look at the targets that they have set of their own will, they have not been meeting these targets. So what we're asking them to do is, again, name and identify what it is they are doing by
Fair
putting in place
enough.
a
And I mean, all I was trying to get at is how can two people in the same department have two different approaches on what you're trying to achieve, which I think is kind of the same thing. But I'll leave it at that and move to a different topic now. Just within the lobbying registry, for who the minister's met with, Minister Duncan has met with, I think almost all you could say are reasonable. They're universities, et cetera. The one I would question, though, or try to understand, and maybe you can't comment on it, is how does it the Minister of Science meets with the Woodbine Entertainment Group and basically a casino and horse racing track. So what relevance is there to that? Is that a constituent of yours, or how does that happen?
Thank you, Ben. Yes, Woodbine Racetrack is a constituent in my riding. They come to see me in my riding office.
That makes a lot of sense then. Another question I have for you is, in around with the opioid crisis, there will be some research. There has been some research, but what else is there that we can do? This goes back to when we did studies on this when I was the chair of the health committee, and what I'm asking you is, are there chair positions going to be appointed from coast to coast to try and understand the issues with the opioid crisis and all the other fallouts through it from an urban perspective, a small urban perspective, a rural perspective? I come from a rural area. We have the same issues. So they have maybe different routes, perhaps, but what are we looking at here for funding to address, to research this issue?
Ben, thank you for the question, and thank you for highlighting this very sad tragedy in our country. And I just want to begin by saying my heart goes out to all those who are affected, their families and their friends. On this issue, as you know, this would fall under the Minister of Health. Canadian Institutes of Health Research falls under her jurisdiction, but the Minister of Health and I work very closely and across research, but in this specific example, that does come under her jurisdiction.
Okay, one more. Okay.
Run out. We're going to move to Mr. Sheehan. You have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Minister. I appreciated the presentation, and congratulations on the launch of Science Odyssey. There's a couple of things happening in the Sioux, including Entomica, which is a little business set up by a scientist working for Natural Resource Canada, and it's just a side business that he does and employs a lot of young people, and it's all about bugs, and it's really exciting. And so that a couple of weeks ago, he was part of Science Week that they do in Sault Ste. Marie, and your friend, Dr. Roberta Bondar, and my friend, Canada's first woman in space, first neurologist in space, was there speaking, and I was pleased to see they had these young elementary students with an Atomica at a senior citizens home, and they were teaching the seniors science. And I was pleased to see that it was about 65% young ladies. So, I think we're starting to see some changes since Dr. Roberta Bondar came on the scene. But on that sort of topic and about education, in your presentation in the estimates, you noted that there is $1.3 billion going to be spent on SIF for post-secondary education. I know in the Sioux that Algoma University, Sioux College, and the Anishinaabe Discovery Center received some funding. And I understand on a local level the significance that it's doing. But if you could sort of tell this committee on the macro Canadian scene what the $1.3 billion is doing for this country.
Thanks, Terry, and thank you always for your strong support of science. And I think this committee would want to recognize it's the 25th anniversary since Dr. Bondar has been in space. You talked a bit, Dr. Roberta Bondar always talks about creating a culture of curiosity. This is what we want to do in this country. All children are born curious. They want to discover and explore. We want to foster that through elementary school, high school, and beyond. And of course, we're happy to do that, whether it's our investments in Promo Science of $10.8 million in this last budget, whether it's Science Odyssey, 600 events happening across the country, whether it's for coding, $50 million to teach grade school children to code. And the last area you hit on was the SIF. And as you know, in Budget 2016, we made a $2 billion investment in research and innovation infrastructure across the country. Much of our infrastructure was 25 years of age. This is good for our students. We want them to have the most up-to-date labs and tools. They're going to be the ones out in the workforce creating the job for the jobs of the future. So $2 billion, and that could be matched by the provinces, the territories, other organizations. And we're really pleased. So we've announced 300 projects. I've had the privilege of going, whether it's Holland College in Prince Edward Island, Centennial College in Toronto, or SAIT out west. This will make a real difference to our country. And with that, I will just highlight in Budget 2017 that we're also looking at federal science infrastructure. My job is to work across government to bring together the science-based departments. And in Budget 2017, we've announced that we will work to create a science infrastructure strategy for the federal government so they have the best labs and tools.
Excellent. Also, I noted in the estimates that the Natural Science and Engineering Research Council is seeking $101.8 million in grants under the Canada First Research Excellence Fund, and it's $70 million more than the 2016-17 estimates. And this funding is a joint initiative of the 3 research granting agencies. So how will this funding be distributed between basic and applied research? And perhaps you could talk about, how this particular group makes it easier for the private sector to collaborate with academia and private business as well.
Thanks, Terry, for the question. I'll just start by reminding this esteemed committee that in Budget 2017, we have the superclusters. It'll be $900+ million that will go to areas such as agriculture, agri-food, advanced manufacturing, clean tech, clean energy. The Canada First Research Excellence Fund invests in research across the country. Last September, we made an investment of $900 million in areas such as brain science, neuroscience, agriculture and agri-food, quantum computing. These are really areas where Canada has tremendous strengths, where Canada can lead. As I said, I was at the National Science Foundation. They want to partner with Canada. They want to see our good research in Arctic, in quantum, in neuroscience, and again, I'll highlight biodiversity, but Lawrence, would you like to talk about CFREC?
Very briefly, please. Very briefly.
I'll be very brief. I think in terms of your question about basic versus sort of applied research, the CFREF is more toward the end of funding basic research, but it was very much focused on areas where where the institution had significant demonstrated capacity in areas that could be ultimately demonstrated to be of significant economic benefit to Canada, and a strong plan for implementation. And so, again, although it was more toward the basic research end of the spectrum, it was very much designed to be able to lever areas of expertise and create future economic benefit.
Thank you very much. We're going to move to Mr. Dreeshen. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. And just to come back a little bit, you've mentioned the $70 million that is there, as far as added research is concerned. But as I mentioned in my last question, we have $59.6 million that is off of the National Research Council of Canada's numbers. MyTax down $7 million, or you transferred from ISED to MyTax this program, a cut of 1.7 to the Centers of Commercialization and Research. you're starting to get into real money there as well, things that are in your into the main estimates and gets moved around. So, and as someone that has a base in agriculture, I'm extremely happy to see research dollars that are there. I disagree vehemently with the suggestion that those kinds of dollars and that kind of research in the research clusters was not there in the previous government. I think it's unfair to make those types of statements in so many ways. In your speech, in your presentation, you talked about joining with the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food at the Central Experimental Farm to announce that $70 million to support agriculture, discovery, science, and innovation in the country. Included in that, then, we need to have some real discussions on agriculture about things like GMOs. We need to look at, and Health Canada has to be taking a look at things like gluten-free diets. You know, when 0.7% of the population has a problem with gluten, yet you've got fads that are 2 and 3% that people believe that they should be, taking on these kinds of diets. So therefore, you get 1.3 to 2.3% of the population that is not benefiting from gluten yet. And you take a look at some of the science and some of the decisions that have been made with neonicotinoids. So these are the kinds of things where I get a little bit concerned when I hear people talk about agriculture and discovery science that don't live out there on the farms, in the ground, and see exactly what this does. And so yes, it's important, but where are the researchers? Are there researchers out there in Western Canada that can take a look and actually talk about what neonicotinoids do and why it is that the canola, the guys that have the bees, want to make sure that their bees are out there where that canola is that is treated with that substance. So there are reasons there, but we get caught up in a bunch of rhetoric that comes from people that just don't want to have a dandelion sprayed on their lawn in downtown Toronto, and so those are concerns that I have. So I really want us to make sure that when we talk about agriculture, discovery, science, that it goes back to agriculture, and that people really recognize what is there. I see too much of this. Here's this fad. Here's that fad. Let's talk about this. Let's satisfy some other group, whether it be Europe or the U.S. or China. And where in reality, all that is happening is they're using these for trade irritants and causing problems there. So how can we be assured that our scientists are going to pay attention to the real part of science instead of getting caught up in this social science aspect of things?
Thank you, Earl, for your question, and you've highlighted a number of areas, so I will try to address them all. Regarding the National Research Council, we're actually making an investment of $60 million in Budget 2016 into the NRC, so that is an investment. On my tax, we are making an investment of $221 million to the NRC. That will be for 10,000 work-integrated learning spaces. You've asked about social sciences, and then I'll come to agriculture. Social sciences, humanities are incredibly important areas. When we talk about science, we include the natural sciences, engineering. We include the physical sciences, health sciences. We also include the social sciences and humanities. And the reason is they help us understand who we are, how we relate to one another. And now I'll come to agriculture.
If I could just quickly interrupt before you get to there, and there will be time. That is, and I've said this so many times, it is the difference, though, between physical science and political science. Because the moment that a physical scientist will not say there is zero chance for something to happen, that's when the political scientists jump in and say, okay, great, that means you can't guarantee this, and that's what creates this situation where people go after agriculture, they go after people that are on the ground. It's happening in oil and gas, it's happening in agriculture right now, and if we don't pay attention to it, and if we're not ahead of the game, we're going to have trouble. And that's going back to agriculture then. Please inform me.
I will remind this committee that we have a world-class peer review system in this country. The grant applications come forward, we fund the very best research, and we strongly support the social sciences and humanities. On agriculture, I come back to this investment we made through the Canada First Research Excellence Fund, the $900 million investment last September, and part of that investment was out in Saskatchewan for agriculture and agri-food. And I'll let my Deputy Minister finish.
Once again,
Yeah, I'll be very quick. The honourable member and Mr. Chair will know that I am the former Deputy Minister of Agriculture. So I would like to indicate that in doing the innovation agenda, I think we see a huge opportunity in terms of that agriculture sector. I think we are well aware of the high level of science that is in Canada in the agriculture sector. It's really seemed to be world leading. And so, as the honourable member is pointing out, we really want to take full advantage of it. But just to link to the innovation agenda in particular, we've been asked to set up 6 sectoral tables, one of which is in agriculture and agri-food. Dominic Barton, in terms of the Advisory Growth Council, has put a great deal of emphasis on agriculture and the opportunities we really have in Canada to take fuller advantage of those markets that are growing in Asia and elsewhere in the world. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you towards improving the success of agriculture on the science side as well as on the commercialization side.
thank you very much. We're going to move to Mr. Bayless. You have 5 minutes.
Bonjour, Ministre Duncan. Merci d'être avec nous aujourd'hui.
Thank you, Madam Duncan, and thank you for being here today.
AI, but I think you've answered that very well, and I'll just point out that I think it's fantastic that we're making a strong investment there. One of the rounds of consultations we did was in the pre-budget. I had a gentleman come, and he was very adamant that, and this is a man in high-tech business. He said, "If you can give one message, teach kids to code," and he was very strong on that. So I was very happy to see we had some money put aside in the budget. Can you elaborate on the amount of money and how you see that playing out?
Thank you, Frank. We really do want to create that culture of curiosity that Dr. Roberta Bondar talks about. And that means investing in our children from elementary to high school and beyond. So some of the investments we make around the promotion of science, we really want to bring science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to our youth and to everybody, and include art and design in that. So $10.8 million for Promo Science in budget 2017. I've talked about the 600 events happening across the country right now. Really pleased that in budget 2017 there was an investment for $50 million to teach grade school students to code. It is the language of the future.
In that same consultation, I had another businessman who's actually an extremely successful businessman, and he has a young daughter that's a scientist, and his frustration was her inability to get funding for her research. I see that that's something you're looking at tackling. Could you touch upon that too, please?
Thank you for the question. And Frank, I will just bring forward that we really are taking a different approach on science. The previous government cut science, cut scientists, it muzzled our scientists, and funding was cut. This government is committed to research science, scientists, the important work they do, and evidence-based decision-making. The very first act of this government was to reinstate the long-form census. Why? Because we want science, evidence, and fact at the heart of decision-making. The second act was to unmuzzle our scientists. And in the spring, we brought forward a new communications policy that would reinforce that scientists can speak in official capacity without being designated, that they could speak publicly where they have scientific and technical expertise or responsibility. We're taking a different approach, and that goes the same when it comes to equity and diversity. I had mentioned that these targets for equity and diversity, for example, in the Canada Research Chairs, were in place since 2006. The universities were not held to account. That's going to change with our putting in place those diversity and equity plans and saying that there is the possibility that funding will be withheld. I do not want to go across the country and hear comments like this from women researchers. Do I have a child or do I have an academic career? Having a child is risky. Wearing a larger lab coat for 7 months to hide their pregnancy, that should not be happening. We want all people to have a chance at our research funding.
A lot of that unmuzzling of science and that drive towards a more scientific approach, I see wrapped up in the Chief Science Officer, that position that you're creating. Can you elaborate on how you see that position playing a role in promoting science and a scientific approach?
Thanks for the question. As you know, part of my mandate letter was to create a Chief Science Officer. I'm happy that on December 5th of 2016, we launched the search for Canada's Chief Science Advisor. This was a position that was canceled under the previous government. Chief Science Advisor will ensure that government science is made available to Canadians, that government scientists can speak freely about their work, and that scientific analyses will inform decision-making. There's an open competition. That competition closed February 13th. This person will advise the Prime Minister, the Minister of Science, and the Cabinet, as well as the fact that the Cabinet can come back to the Chief Science Advisor and give charges to them. And we hope to have this person in place by the spring, and this is really exciting. And we know one person isn't going to change the system, but it will be important to build that advisory role going forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And Mr. Massey, you have the final 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks again for your input. And one of the things that I want to get to social sciences, but again, I guess I would implore upon your government to look at Bill C-25. Again, this is the Corporations and Business Act that is being amended. Section A in particular deals with the structure of corporate boards and governance of the inclusion of women, persons with disabilities. The bill, again, does not actually, is shied away from actually making a definition of human rights. It wouldn't even comment on what a human right was with regards to racial equality. And second of all, it didn't address the issue of gender by even including the word, gender in the bill. And then lastly, it's moving to a model called comply and explain, which under the way that the legislation is written is at the very best. If you follow the legislation after we finish it, at the very best, you're looking at probably 7 years in the time duration before it can actually be reviewed once it's actually passed. So you're probably into 10 years from this date in terms of reviewing that legislation from the time we pass it in the House of Commons, because you have a majority, and you do have a lot of allies looking to change that. And I would implore your government to reach out to those allies that want to actually make the bill relevant, because you're now doing this in your own department under this initiative with the universities is doing that. With my remaining time, I will provide it over to you to ask what are, in particular, social sciences and humanities, again, has come up. We've heard a lot of discussion about, are you doing any efforts, or the government doing any work to bridge the social sciences and humanities to some of the work of trying to privatize or bring ideas to market? So more of the hard sciences for innovation. Are you doing anything with the social sciences and humanities to help in that? That seems to be a lost piece of the puzzle for getting items to the marketplace, ideas to production, so to speak.
Thank you, Brian, for the question. Thank you for highlighting the importance of the social sciences and the humanities. I hope people noticed in Budget 2016 that there is a large gap between the funding that goes to the Canadian Institutes of Health Research and the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council. In Budget 2016, I start to close that gap because social sciences matter. And it matters because it's talking about people, whether understanding how we relate to one another, how our societies operate, but also when one wants to commercialize, you need to understand people, and the social sciences can be of real help there.
Thank you. Thank you.
And on that, we will end our session. I'd like to extend to Minister Duncan, thank you very much for coming to our committee today, as well as your colleagues. And we're going to break for a very strict 2 minutes while we switch over, and we'll suspend for the moment. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we're back for part two. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. So we are a little short on time. So our briefing our guests will do their briefing. I think the best thing to do is, rather than going with 777, keep your time short if you have questions, and we'll just try to address it that way, if that's okay with the committee. Okay. Finally, I just want to remind everybody that on Thursday we have Minister Chagger for the first hour and Minister Baines for the second hour. I'm going to ask that we keep our preambles short. Today we went over because we had preambles, and then I try to leave the minister answer questions. But I will have to be a lot more stricter on Thursday, or else we won't get through it. And I want to make sure that we do. So make sure you keep your preambles short, and we have to stick to the time because there will be a break in there. And so just forewarned. Ben.
You send a message to Minister Baines and Minister Chagger to omit their preamble as well. Today you have noticed Minister Duncan, every time she started to speak, she didn't provide an answer. She provided much preamble. And I agree, if the members keep their preamble to a minimum and just ask a question, and the ministers keep their preamble to a minimum, it works well for both, and it can't be a one-way street. So I know you talk to them a lot, so if you could just advise them of that from good old Ben, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Keep that in mind. Once again, I cannot control what comes out of the witness's testimony, but I will cut people off. I'm just forewarning, or else we won't get through it on Thursday. Okay, so that's where we are. So we now have between us, and I remind everybody we're not televised. The first hour was televised, but we are public right now. So this morning we have from the Department of Industry, Mark Sean, Director General Marketplace Framework Policy Branch, Strategic Policy Sector, Konstantinos Georgaris, Director General, Canadian Intellectual Property Office, Corporate Strategies and Services Branch, and Alison McDermott, Director General, Program Coordination Branch. So today we're getting a technical briefing on intellectual property and tech transfer in Canada. Who will be addressing? Mr. Sean, the floor is yours.
Good morning. It's nice to be back. My name is Mark Sean, as you've just heard, and I'm the Director General of Marketplace Framework Policy Branch at Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada. Along with me are my colleagues, Alison McDermott and Konstantinos Georgaris, who also have interests on the technology transfer and intellectual property administration side. Pour débuter, je vais vous présenter un bref aperçu de nos lois.
Allow me to give you an overview of our laws covering intellectual property in Canada and the advantages on the market that they provide us. My colleague here from ISED will then explain the link between these projects and the universities and transfer of technology. And then my last colleague will tell you about the mandate of the Canadian Intellectual Property Office.
Our policy context, they're considered to be key marketplace framework laws in Canada. We recognize that they play a critical role in encouraging innovation, attracting investment, and supporting other key drivers of the Canadian economy. As you can see from the statistics on the right side of slide 3, Canada has a decent track record when it comes to our marketplace frameworks. That said, we know we need to do better, particularly in the use of IP by firms. IP laws create terms of protection enshrining published private rights. As you see on the right, copyright protects original creative works such as books, movies, music, and video games. Copyright lasts for the life of the author plus 50 years or 70 years for sound recording. Patents protect novel inventions, such as advancements in technology, pharmaceuticals, and processes. Patents last for 20 years from filing. Trademarks promote certainty in the marketplace by protecting distinctive branding used in commerce, such as a logo, a slogan, or brand names that distinguish the goods and services from one person or organization from others. Once amendments to the Trademarks Act come into force, a trademark legislation will last for 10 years, renewable indefinitely for additional 10-year periods. Industrial designs protect product design, such as the shape of a lamp or the design of a chair. Once the amendments to the Industrial Design Act come into force, industrial design rights will last the later of either 10 years from the date of registration or 15 years from the date of filing. These rights prevent others from using, copying, selling, or manufacturing without authorization of rights holders. IP laws establish the requirements to obtain or challenge the rights, their use, length, and scope of protection, and the administration governing the granting, registration, and maintenance of IP rights. IP rights are domestic, but are anchored in treaties which set minimal requirements. Le régime de le pays au Canada voit trois objectifs principaux.
Canada's IP regime has 3 main objectives. 1, support innovation, enable innovators to extract value from their creations and recoup investments. 2, ensure that Canadians have access to a wide range of innovative products, new technologies, goods and services. And 3rd, promote consumers' confidence in the marketplace. Well-functioning marketplace frameworks generate positive outcome for Canadians. They provide incentives for innovation and creativity. They ensure access to the latest technologies and ideas. They foster competition. They promote confidence in the marketplace. They balance competing stakeholder interests as well as a common good.
Drivers of the Canadian economy. As the chart on slide 6 shows, the orange bars show that they account for almost 14% of all jobs in Canada and over 25% of our GDP. About 40% of all Canadian exports are from IP-intensive industries. And we know that SMEs that own IP are more likely to grow to scale and have a greater propensity to export. For example, SMEs that hold formal IP are 4 times more likely to export, 64% more likely to be high growth, and 32% more likely to seek financing. Canada has made strides to improve and align its IP regime with our international partners. For example, we introduced amendments to ratify the CETA agreement, which included an additional period of protection for eligible pharmaceutical patents. In 2016, Canada played a leading international role on intellectual property. Canada amended its copyright law to implement and accede to the Marrakesh Treaty to facilitate access to published works for persons who are blind, visually impaired, or otherwise print disabled. Canada was the critical 20th country needed to bring the treaty into force internationally. And our agenda for 2017 is very ambitious. We know that there will be a parliamentary review of the Copyright Act. The 5-year review is mandated by Section 92 of the Copyright Act, which requires Parliament to review the Copyright Act every 5 years. 5-year reviews are intended to ensure the Act remains responsive to changes in technology. Budget 2017 also announced that the government will develop a new comprehensive intellectual property strategy over the coming year. The strategy will help ensure that Canada's intellectual property regime is modern and robust and supports commercializing Canadian innovations in the 21st century. The purpose of the IP strategy is to support the objectives of the Innovation and Skills Plan, namely fostering an ecosystem that supports businesses to grow to scale. The strategy will work to do this by ensuring that the IP regime is efficient and fosters innovation, and that firms have the awareness and incentive to strategically use IP to grow and compete. With that, I'll turn it to my colleague, Alison.
Great. Thank you, Mark. As mentioned, I'm the Director General within ISED's Science and Innovation sector. So we work closely with the granting councils and the post-secondary education sector. So Mark has started off with a good overview of the overarching context for IP, and I'll, in my remarks, try to narrow in on the topic of IP and technology transfer in the post-secondary education sector. J'ai préparé mes remarques en anglais, mais je suis...
I've drawn up my notes in English, but I'll be very happy to respond to questions in French.
Important functions, including training, the creation of scientific knowledge, and the transfer of that knowledge to those best placed to put it to use. So we'll call that technology transfer. IP protection is an important component of technology transfer because it allows academic researchers to publish their research while still providing industrial partners with the incentive to commercialize. Technology transfer offices, we'll call them TTOs, facilitate technology transfer activities at universities and colleges. These can be as varied as managing IP, developing and supporting partnerships between academia and knowledge users, and supporting entrepreneurship and company growth. Universities and colleges play different roles in the mobilization of knowledge, with university research often being driven by researcher and student curiosity, and college-applied research being driven largely by industry needs. As we've been asked to be brief, I'll focus in this presentation on university technology transfer. The government of Canada provides support for technology transfer through the federal granting agencies, NSERC, SSHRC, and CIHR, including many programs designed to encourage post-secondary and private sector research collaborations. These seek to bring a wide range of research and technical expertise to bear on specific industrial challenges. These are also about exposing researchers to these industry needs. These include several NSERC programs under the NSERC Strategy for Partnership and Innovation, as well as the Tri-Council Business-Led Networks of Centers of Excellence programs, as well as the Centers of Excellence for Commercialization and Research. These are generally known as the BLNCE and the CSER programs, as well as the MyTax scientific internship program, which received significant sums of money in the last budget. Many of these programs include the training of highly qualified personnel as another means to help ensure knowledge is also mobilized into the workforce. I'll mention another program, the Research Support Fund, formerly known as the Indirect Cost Program, for those familiar with that. This is a tri-agency program that provides Canadian post-secondary institutions with support to help them defray the indirect costs of research that is funded by the federal granting councils. Under this program, the Government of Canada directly supports costs related to technology transfer, including the creation, expansion, and maintenance of a TTO, and costs associated with IP protection and supporting industry partnerships. The next slide on metrics. Metrics are an ongoing challenge in technology transfer. There are no available metrics that fully capture the economic impact of technology activities at post-secondary institutions on a national scale. Instead, we tend to follow narrower outcomes related to IP that are easiest to measure. So you'll hear talk, and we'll keep track of things such as patents, licenses, startups created, and licensing revenue generated. There can be some downsides associated with the focus on those kinds of metrics, dangers that TTOs can sometimes be pushed to chase those kinds of metrics, sometimes at the cost of the quality of the broader objective of transferring technology. The majority of Canadian university TTOs, when last asked, suggested that these common IP metrics, while the best that we have in some ways, don't effectively measure the full extent of what they do in their offices. Now, that also reflects some evolution that's taken place in recent years over the way TTOs work. So many of them are now more focused on other technology transfer outcomes that are not IP related, but better suited to advance the Canadian economy in the long run. So things like forming academic industrial partnerships and transfer through HQP or highly qualified personnel of skills to the workplace. In terms of IP ownership policies, there is no national uniform policy governing IP, and I know this is an issue that you're interested in. Provincial governments have the jurisdiction to set IP policy at post-secondary institutions. The majority of these will actually defer to the institutions to set their own policies, which in turn are often embedded in faculty collective agreements. This has led to a diversity of approaches to intellectual property protection policies, which can be more or less summarized in two broad approaches. There are the inventor-owned policies and the university-owned policies. And actually, both of them are associated with high-quality technology transfer outcomes, or they can be. And some universities have a policy that contains features of both. We refer to this as the joint ownership approach, where both the inventor and the institution share IP rights. Now, with respect to federally funded research, the granting councils do not require institutions to follow any particular IP policy. With respect to community colleges, as the role of applied research in Canadian colleges is to help solve an industry problem, Canadian colleges normally do not own their IP. It remains with the industrial partner. For a university that adopts an inventor-owned IP, so I'm now on slide 13, comparison of IP ownership models. For a university that adopts an inventor-owned IP policy, the researcher or inventor has the right to decide whether to sign over his or her IP to an industrial partner. Some of the advantages of this kind of an approach are that it can be highly motivating for academics. It encourages them to get more actively involved in the commercialization of their research. It also gives them flexibility to adjust to the licensing preferences of the firm that they're dealing with. In contrast, a TTO office may be constrained by broader institutional policies. On the downside, this kind of an approach, I would say the success of this approach can be highly dependent on the individual concerned, whether they have the kind of skills and the ability and the motivation to commercialize their IP and or launch a successful startup. This model assumes that researchers are motivated by the concept of capturing monetary benefits from the results of their research. It can also increase the complexity of negotiating licensing agreements due to the inventor's often lack of experience in this area. So the next slide, we look at the university-owned ownership model. For a university that adopts a university-owned IP policy, the university has the right to sell or retain the inventor's IP once it's disclosed. Some advantages of this policy are that it seeks to simplify the process of commercializing and licensing by centralizing ownership and taking maximum advantage of the expertise in the TTO. It also gives universities flexibility to pool the licensing of relevant IP that may have been invented by different researchers from diverse fields. So they might package different patents together and sell them to an appropriate company that could take advantage of that. This policy recognizes that researchers may not have the interest or expertise to further develop and commercialize their intellectual property independently. On the downside, this kind of a policy can create a barrier to technology transfer when university TTOs, sometimes, and many of which operate on cost recovery models, they tend to overvalue IP in terms of trying to maximize their financial benefits. TTOs can also be less nimble and have less flexibility to adjust to the licensing preferences of an individual firm than an inventor would, than a single person would. Inventors may be less inclined under this policy to be involved in this critical stage of developing the technology towards commercialization. This is the kind of counter side of the issue of the motivation that was mentioned in the inventor-owned model. So we go to slide 16. We have some examples of international experience. There's a lot of interest in the United States, where IP ownership rights for government-funded university research have been governed by the Bayh-Dole Act since 1980. This is an act that essentially states that the rights to inventions resulting from federally funded research belong exclusively to universities, and it is subject to a number of obligations regarding disclosure and royalty sharing. The Bayh-Dole Act has often been seen as an important catalyst for increases in patenting and licensing activity that took place in the 1980s and the 90s. I think it's hard to say unambiguously that this is responsible for that, in the sense that there were a lot of this strong trend and upward trend in patenting and licensing did begin before the implementation of the Act, and you could attribute many elements of this increase to other factors. So, for example, the broader scope of patentable inventions, the fact that there's an increasing propensity to patent that took place over this time, and it's the nature of technological progress that took place in certain fields. So biomedical sciences, for example, really picked up a lot in the 80s and 90s. Looking at other countries, the UK, Spain, Switzerland, Denmark, Finland, Germany, and Norway all maintain a university-owned IP model. In Australia, as in Canada, universities are able to develop their own policies. The majority of these use a university-owned IP model. Italy and Sweden use a professor privilege IP policy where IP ownership remains with the inventor. Overall, moving to slide 16, we would say there's little evidence the policies governing who owns the IP rights of an invention have an overriding impact on the success of technology transfer between institutions and industry, as measured by the volume of patents and licenses. As mentioned before, there are successful examples of both models of ownership. I'll give you a couple of examples. University of Waterloo is often cited as an example of an inventor-owned policy that's very effective. UBC would be an example of a university-owned model that works very well. They're both considered to be leaders from a technology transfer perspective. But other factors that are often pointed to in terms of contributing to the success of technology transfer would include things like how much resources a university puts towards its technology transfer officer and to these activities in general, the quality of contractual agreements, overall just the level of education and awareness about the importance of intellectual property protection and commercialization. And overall culture is seen as very important. So Waterloo is an example of a university where there's a strong culture of entrepreneurship that supports and values technology transfer, and that culture has a strong influence as well. Some other channels of technology transfer that can be arguably as important or more important than IP licensing, as mentioned before, this idea of movement of people, students in particular, from universities to the private sector or public sectors, and they bring their know-how with them. Company creation, another mechanism. Publication of research results and interactions through things like meetings and conferences. We mentioned the MyTax internships that create connections between universities and firms, and just general research partnerships and cooperative research centers. I'm going to turn it over to Konstantinos now.
Thank you very much. Bonjour, je suis Konstantinos Gigaras.
Hello, I'm Konstantinos Gigaras from the Canadian Intellectual Property Office, the Corporate Strategies and Services Branch. I'm the Director General.
acts and registering IP. What I'd like to do briefly is give you an overview of some of the count and trends in IP and do a bit of a deeper dive into where the technologies are coming from and what those technology areas look like and where the collaboration is happening. And then finally, give you a debrief on interactions we've had with technology transfer offices to identify barriers they have in using the IP system and what we are doing to address it. As my colleagues have mentioned, there are a number of broader objectives for research and technology transfer, and not all of these discoveries will make it to the Canadian Intellectual Property Office. Rather, it's a smaller subset that we see in terms of patenting. On slide 19, in terms of our overall applications, we receive about 100,000 IP applications per year. In 2015, there were 37,000 patent applications, and there were 22,000 patents granted. If you look at Canadian universities, patenting in our office at CIPO, University of Alberta, for example, had 27 patent applications in fiscal year 2015-16. Again, this is just applications in Canada. On the next slide, slide 20, we look at where Canadians and universities file for patents, and you will see that most Canadians will file outside of Canada. If you look at the top blue line, this represents all Canadians, and it shows that about 13,000 patent applications were made in the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office in 2014. If you look at the green line, there were about 4,000 patent applications by Canadians in Canada. So about 3/4 of the applicants will go to the U.S. first, and that's a business decision. Likewise, if you look at the red and purple lines, that represents university filings, and it's the same proportion. About 3/4 of universities will file in the States. Looking at the next slide, slide 20, we conduct what is called IP analytics. This allows us to dig deeper into the data that's provided in the patent applications. And here you see the spread of technology that Canadian universities are patenting worldwide. And you can see this landscape. You have peaks and valleys. The peaks, the snow-capped peaks, represent the areas of specialty that Canadian universities are filing for patents. Two to highlight are alkyl and optical light beams, for example, and I'll get back to that in the next coming slides. So that's a general landscape, if you will, of technology that Canadian universities are patenting in. On slide 22, we look at just one university, so we can go deeper. So here, looking at McGill, for example, in the last 15 years, they filed for 273 patents in Canada. Worldwide, they filed for 758. And in fact, what we can do when we look at the patent applications, we can unbundle where the collaborations are happening. And I understand that was an issue this committee is interested in looking in. Where's the collaboration happening? And in 52% of these worldwide patent applications that McGill pursued over the last 15 years, over half of them had collaborations with other universities and companies. On the next slide, we do the same thing for the UBC, but let's skip forward to slide 24. If you dig even deeper into the patent data, you can identify where the collaboration is happening. So here at the University of Ottawa, this is a collaboration map looking at optical transmission and communication systems. And you can see how these patents actually are coming forward as collaborative applications with the University of Ottawa and companies such as X-Ray Optical or Spectalis Corp, as well as Harvard and Waterloo University. So once you start digging deeper and deeper into the data, you can see where the collaboration is happening. So now let me step back. CIPO, our mandate is to support innovation and help pull through the ideas once they do come to our office. We tried to better understand what were some of the challenges that technology transfer offices and universities were facing in terms of actually applying for IP. And they identified 5 key challenges. Actually, there's the 5th one that's not on this slide here, but I'll start off with that, cost. Clearly, technology transfer offices have to make business decisions as to what they pursue to patent. Our office provides a 50% discount to university applicants, so it's our contribution to help reduce costs for the university applicant. A second issue that came up was the issue around awareness and education. We heard throughout from technology transfer offices and the community around universities that there's a need for awareness of how to effectively use IP. And with that, CIPO is launching a very extensive work on developing educational programs and material for IP strategy. And we have something called IP case studies that we work with students and universities to help them understand IP as they're a part of the spin-off, if you will, for university discovery. A third element that came up in terms of a barrier or a challenge that universities face, as I mentioned earlier, 3/4 will file outside of Canada. There was the issue of harmonization internationally. So CIPO is working very hard to implement some treaties, some international IP treaties that we're targeting 2019 for them to come to force. And this will help ensure that there's the harmonized system, and it will help facilitate IP filing in Canada and abroad. A fourth element was trying to understand the breadth of technology and what's coming forward. And what we're doing, and I demonstrated earlier through IP analytics, is we're trying to show where the technologies are coming up, and that helps identify the collaboration. And this type of information can help inform professors, technology transfers, where the collaboration can happen. And the final element, it was a barrier really directed at the office itself. Our databases are lacking, and we're working hard to modernize the databases, and we have done quite a bit over the last few months to bring more information forward to users. So just to sum up my end, you've seen some of the trends. We've done a deep dive into the technology areas, and CIPO, we are taking action to help, for those coming to our door, to help facilitate their applications going forward. So I'll wrap up with that.
Great. Just quickly before we get to your questions, I just wanted to note on slide 12, where we indicate that provincial governments have jurisdictions to set IP policy. We should be clear that IP policy and IP legislation is constitutionally federal, but education is provincial. And so when we talk about those IP policies, we mean university-owned versus inventor-owned. But
Distribution of ownership as between researchers and universities.
so very interested in your questions, so thank you so much. And sorry.
Thank you very much for this extremely detailed technical briefing. It'll actually help us, and because we are public, we can request that this be entered into the study if we want to, and we can call them back. So we don't have a lot of time, I'm going to go down the speaker list that we have. Please keep it short so everybody has a chance to ask at least one question, if that's what it is. Lloyd, you're first.
Thank you, and thanks for a fantastic presentation here this morning. In the short time we have, you mentioned the development of the IP strategy in 2017. Our committee's looking at getting into this study. At what point is your study going to need input? And we don't want to miss the train.
So you'll have seen in Budget 2017, the commitment was for a comprehensive national strategy within a year. We are looking, obviously, and working closely with Minister Baines' office and Mr. Baines to help him undertake that strategy and lay it out. Given that it obviously is aimed at being comprehensive, I think the sooner the better is obviously great, because we're obviously in the thick of working on some of the ideas now. And so I think we're very much aiming to try and have something within that year deadline at the latest.
As we're getting into our mid-year break, where we go back to our constituency offices, is the fall too late?
The fall as an input, I think, would be quite useful. If the fall was the beginning of your study, I think that would be challenging.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
So we go around. Earl.
Well, thank you very much. And of course, we have, as you may be aware, we just came back from D.C. and we were talking, intellectual property and that type of thing there. And one of the things that was brought up were patent trolls, and I think Konstantinos, that has to do with the education, the awareness, and so on. Although it's also, there's a bunch of other things. But I'm just wondering, from your perspective, can you kind of let us know what that is, how you might feel that governments or universities may be able to protect themselves, so that we all, some of us heard what was going on there, but so that we all kind of get a feel for that.
I'll start the response, and I can turn to my colleague on the policy issues. With regard to patent trolls, we've been looking at this very closely over the last few years. And what we have determined from an IP office perspective is that the more challenging issues are largely focused in technology areas such as software. And that seems to be concentrated more in the United States. So we patent software differently here in Canada. And we're not noticing the same kind of trolling activity here. In fact, it's very, very limited. Having said that, as I mentioned, most Canadians will be filing in the United States. So anything we can do to help inform them of the market, whether it's the U.S. or other markets, that is our job to bring that to light.
Just before you go on, though, just could you explain what patent trolling is so that everybody knows that it's not just a term?
I'll turn to my colleague.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, I'll be super brief. There's an important distinction to be made. So there are non-practicing entities who essentially have patent portfolios or IP portfolios that they use for the purposes of extolling rents, licenses or otherwise. I would make a distinction between an NPE and a troll. A troll is someone who essentially has acquired vague or ambiguous patents or intellectual property licenses purely for the purposes of shaking someone down for rents that they may not have been able to get in a courtroom, but may be frightening enough to the university or innovator that they're willing to pay simply because of the generalized nature of what they own. And I just to complete your question, I think we're looking at this issue in great detail, both in terms of its incidence in Canada and the degree to which our rules can help prevent some of those bad behaviors, but more importantly on the strategy side, the degree to which our firms are IP savvy in their capacity to prevent themselves and be defensive at the outset.
Thank you. Brian?
Thank you. What about patent unicorns? I'm just kidding.
It's like, you stumped me, Mr. Massey.
There you go. Oh, we got investor angels and patent trolls, and anyway. With slide 19 that you have there with regards to the top 10 university filers to SIPO, just explain, I think we should attach this presentation to anything that we do for the public. I think it's very helpful, actually. And then just ask you, explain what constitutes why they're ranking the way it is. I don't know if it's just a judgment call or if there's a particular reason of the universities. I'm just interested in that. And then obviously, there's, at any rate, I'll leave it for you, and that's all.
The ranking here is just a straight count of the number of applications, and this includes both patent files as well as trademark filings. And you can see that many universities are very active on the trademark side. It's just a listing.
So maybe in the future, though, we could maybe see something with application to market or something like that. I mean, I don't want us to be always continually on that, but that would be kind of an interesting part of it. But anyway, thank you for the information and presentation.
Thank you. Frank.
My questions are to do with metrics. A couple questions there. First of all, the AUTM metrics, if I understand that on slide 11, my understanding is those metrics are very weak because it's not everybody that submits their data. In fact, I think something like half of them don't even bother submitting. So when you put these numbers up here, am I right in understanding that they're very weak numbers?
Yeah, you know what? I could come back to you with more information on the strength. I'm not aware of there being terribly weak in the sense that of participation rates. If I could find out.
I am. So maybe you could double check that and see how many did respond to this study, the last one that was done, and how many universities are part of AUTM, how many are bothering to submit data or not. And this is a tease out of a broader study that they did for Canada, United States primarily, and Canada fit into it. So if we could look at that. And it brings me a second question about metrics. Again, you've been able to tease out some numbers on Canadian universities filing to Canada. You don't, if I'm to understand, you don't have that kind of information to the United States, or you can go piece by piece to pull it out, but there's no repository for that. Is that correct?
We rely on a number of databases, including the World Intellectual Property Organization, to pull together this data. In fact, on slide 20, I'll refer back to the red line, which shows the number of Canadian universities filing in the United States. And in 2014, there were 550 approximately.
How did you tease that information out?
So again, this comes from the individual offices from around the world contribute their data to the World Intellectual Property Organization. That's the United Nations body for
So
intellectual property.
if they have bothered to submit it, then you can get it. If they haven't, you can't.
Correct. Now, a very important issue here is also depending on the IP ownership. And some universities will file in the name of the institution. Others, it'll be in the name of the researcher. So that becomes a little more challenging to pull together. So again, when we try to understand the value of the metrics, some of these metrics need to understand that there are...
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I think you mentioned it very clearly that the metrics are weak, and so I don't want people to look at these things and think these are strong numbers when I believe they are not. Okay, thank you.
We're going to move on to Majid. Just for your reference, bells have been delayed to 11:05, votes at 11:30.
Thank you. Thank you. Great job. Quick question. I know in your opening remarks you stated that you've only focused on universities. Do you have any data or do you have any information that you can share with us of any type of following partnership model, universities, colleges, businesses, and governments? Because we are trying to look at how we can expedite the commercialization, and we know in the colleges, applied research and partnering with the businesses recently have been very successful, and right now we are not considering it, and I didn't say anything in this report. Not that I'm saying you excluded, I just want to know whether you have any input on that. Thank you.
No, I think we are quite interested in studying the level of interaction that's taking place, and for example, working with some of our stakeholder groups, Polytechnics Canada and CICAN, would be we can probably get you some information about the levels of activity and partnerships that take place. I guess the challenge with it's more a question of tracking activities that take place as opposed to getting a sense of what an overall baseline for like at a national level might be. So this is an area that I guess we have an interest in kind of doing a better job in terms of metrics tracking. But in terms of the focus for today being on intellectual property protection, the focus wasn't so much on colleges because, as I said, they tend not to
more from a tech transfer side.
Yeah,
but I know
agreed.
time is limited, so we'll get you again.
Yeah. There's a great degree of information regarding to the number of patents filed by universities. Is somebody tracking number of these patents that are actually commercialized?
So I think we have a number of metrics that we continue, and I think Allison's point on the challenge of getting at the right metrics in the intellectual property space is a hard one. So the number of patents filed is only one indicator. We have licensing revenue, for instance, that comes into the institution, but to Allison's point from earlier, licensing revenue often doesn't tell you a complete story either, because you can tell how much the university has earned from it, but that's not necessarily a full indication of whether or not that was the best value that you could have gotten out of the intellectual property, because there may have been a race to license as opposed to a race to bundle.
Now we are not talking of the amount earned, the revenue earned here. We are talking of number of patents actually getting commercialized.
So licensing revenue is a good indicator of that, in part because licensing suggests that someone's paying you for the use of the intellectual property, which means it's actually an application. In terms of the degree to which you can then actually look at use, so it would vary by type of intellectual property. So in trademarks, for instance, there are searches, and then on your freedom to operate, it would vary enormously depending on the intellectual property zone. The heat maps, as they were, about activity and collaborations is an indication often that you can get a sense because you know who the commercial actor is, and then you can do the digging as to what the actual value is.
Thank you. Earl, did you have a question?
Just perhaps to go back to slide 3 when you're talking about because I think Frank had talked about metrics and so on. those ratings that we see there, second in technology and technological and economic value with OECD and so on, all of these, they're international rankings that have come when we were I was with the minister in Germany, and we had a chance to talk about, the actual investments and quite frankly, in the past, we hear things about dollar figures and so on, but in the past, we were putting in the same dollars into research as Germany was on GDP and per population. The issue and the problem, of course, is when business comes in and they say, well, where are we going to jump in? Well, we've got, and I think we just heard it, we've got issues with each of the provinces having their own jurisdictions and the universities within them, and so we've got 6 time zones, we've got all of this, and quite frankly, we're not the draw. So, I think that's kind of another part that we need to take a look at, and, the dollars are there, the research is there, but too often, as it seems, we're just checking off the box to say that we did a study instead of saying, how did we innovate and how did we commercialize? So I think those are some of the things that we'll be looking for. So if you're able to give us information on that as we go through the study, or if there's anything that you could quickly respond to now, at least it gives us a direction that we could travel.
The super quick response would just be one of that was at the heart, those commercialization outcomes and those innovation outcomes, and the weak performance was really at the heart of the innovation and skills plan, and why the IP strategy was a part of that is in part because we recognize one of the tools in getting to better outcomes is more sophisticated use of intellectual property by our firms. We often have invention, we don't often get the rent that comes out of that invention, and that's one of the things that we know we need to focus on.
Frank, last one.
Question of the BDA Act, the Bayh-Dole Act in the States. That came about because the Americans found that they had an awful lot of IP stuck in their universities, and they were looking for ways to get it out. And they did decide to put it, so they did, as you mentioned here, have some obligations, particularly disclosure. Now, we fund to the tune of over $1 billion our universities with 0 strings attached, and I'm not looking necessarily for royalty sharing, but have you considered looking at a request for a forced request for disclosure tied to this funding, number one? And have you done any type of study on the Bayh-Dole Act that you might be able to share with us? What value it has brought to the American economy and why they brought it in?
Sure. Well, there have been a number of studies on the Bayh-Dole Act, and I would say overall they're not incredibly conclusive, as mentioned, about a lot of things happened at the same time, so there aren't a lot of studies that would conclusively point to the Bayh-Dole Act in itself as being the factor responsible. But there are many people who think that this is an important factor. It's one of those things that's hard to tease out specifically. We're actually quite interested in these questions. One thing I would kind of caveat would note that a lot of the IP rules are tied up in university agreements, between universities and collective agreements, bargaining agreements. So these are relatively hard things to change.
The disclosure part, were they just even the disclosure of who's patented? I don't think that's tied up.
Just quickly, there is a transparent registry of patent filings, which does have the disclosure. The only other point I'd put on the disclosure, and Alison and I have been talking about this in the context of the IP strategy, is there have been a number of initiatives that Alison pointed to, including the Centers of Excellence for Commercialization of Research, for instance, where a CSER like Mars Innovation has a disclosure requirement within their member institutions that get disclosed to MI. MI then bundles, works on that IP, figures out how best to get it into a commercialized market. And so we are looking at some of those important mechanisms for who are you disclosing to, not just a patent registry, but potentially is there a receptor on the other side that can help really bring full value to that intellectual property.
And help you collect the metrics that you need specifically.
One of the things we're doing actually is we have just been surveying, in 2016, we undertook a survey of universities and colleges with respect to issues around IP, technology transfer, the work of the technology transfer offices. So we're actually just compiling that data, and disclosure is one of the issues that was on there. So we'll likely have more information to share with the committee as we do the follow-up and put that data together. But a large number of universities do have their own policies on disclosure.
Thank you very much to our industry officials for coming in. Before we break, I just want to, we have the ministers coming in on Thursday, and on next Monday we have another technical briefing, of which we've also, so we'll have the industry, but we also have CRTC coming in that day as well. If we could start getting in preliminary witnesses for both studies, we might be able to actually use the first to start witnesses, or at least the following one. So if we can actually start to try to give preliminary witnesses, that would be great. We're good? Thank you very much to our officials for coming in, and great day, guys. Thanks. We're adjourned.